My daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Ignore him. He's old and tired." I'm Raymond Grant, Medal of Honor recipient. That daughter just humiliated a war hero at his own 70th birthday party. But here's what she didn't know. I'd spent 6 years working 3 jobs to pay her college tuition, $186,000 in cash, every receipt saved, every sacrifice documented. While she was building a career claiming to be self-made, I was staying silent about the truth. She'd turned my sacrifice into her $1 million success story. But tonight, everything was about to change. The governor had just walked in, the same man whose life I saved in Iraq. He was carrying an envelope with my name on it, and my daughter was about to learn that some secrets don't stay buried forever. I didn't argue with her, didn't defend myself. I just touched the manila folder in my jacket pocket. Inside were 186 receipts that would destroy her lies. This story changed my relationship with my daughter forever. If you want to hear how it ends, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Trust me, you won't see this coming. Because what happened next forced her to choose between telling the truth or committing fraud in front of 95 witnesses. Let me tell you about being invisible in plain sight. For the past 7 years, since Eleanor became Dean of Academic Affairs at Michigan State, I've attended exactly 4 university events. Each time, she's introduced me the same way. This is Raymond. Never my father, never mentioning what I sacrificed for her success. The first incident happened at her promotion ceremony in 2017. The university president approached our table during the reception. "Dr. Grant," he said to Eleanor, "your biography mentions your first-generation college. That must have been challenging." Eleanor smiled that polished smile she'd perfected for donors. "Incredibly challenging. I worked multiple jobs, saved every penny. Pure determination." I was sitting right there, in my good suit, the Navy one I'd bought for her graduation in 2008. The president glanced at me briefly. "Raymond helps with maintenance around campus," Eleanor said quickly. "Very reliable. Helps with maintenance. Like I hadn't mopped the floors of her dormitory freshman year. Like I hadn't worked the night security shift at the very library where she wrote her thesis." The second incident cut deeper. Last spring, Eleanor hosted a faculty dinner at her house, the house I'd helped buy with overtime money from my construction weekends. The provost mentioned the new first-generation Student Success Fund that Eleanor directed. $2.3 million raised so far, Eleanor announced proudly, based on my personal experience overcoming educational barriers. I was serving coffee, invisible in my server's jacket. The provost looked curious. What barriers specifically? Financial hardship. No family support for education. I literally had no one who understood the college process. No one. I set down the coffee pot harder than necessary. Eleanor shot me a warning look. "Raymond, could you check on dessert?" Dismissed like hired help. But here's what she didn't know. I'd kept everything, every receipt, every time card, every bank statement from those 6 years when I lived on ramen noodles so she could eat at the campus dining hall. The manila envelope in my truck contained 186 tuition payment receipts, each one stamped paid in full, each one signed by me. September 2002 through May 2008. $1,400 here, $1,500 there. Sometimes I'd scrape together $2,000 for a payment, working 90-hour weeks. While I was eating dollar store pasta, Eleanor had $31,000 sitting in an emergency fund account, untouched, because she knew her father would handle everything. She'd written about it too. Her college application essay titled, "My Father's Hands." I'd found it in a box when helping her move. 4 pages describing my sacrifice in beautiful detail. How I'd work until 2 a.m., come home with paint under my fingernails. How she'd hear me making lunch at 5 a.m., always the same, peanut butter sandwich and black coffee. My father gave up his dreams so I could chase mine, she'd written. His hands built my future. Beautiful words, except now she claimed those hands didn't exist. The university's website featured Eleanor's biography prominently. Dr. Eleanor Grant overcame significant socioeconomic barriers to become the youngest dean in university history. A first-generation college graduate, she exemplifies the transformative power of higher education. First generation, the phrase that erased me completely. Tonight was my 70th birthday. Eleanor insisted on hosting at the university president's mansion. a Georgian estate worth $2.8 million. It'll be elegant, she said. Impressive for the donors attending. Always about the donors, always about the image. 95 guests. Faculty, trustees, major contributors. Eleanor had invited them all, turning my birthday into a networking opportunity. She'd even arranged for Governor Walsh to attend, Michigan's biggest university donor, worth over $50 million in contributions. I arrived at 7:30 sharp, wearing my dress uniform for the first time in 15 years. Navy blue with 7 ribbons, including the Medal of Honor, prominently displayed. Eleanor met me at the door. "Dad, maybe the regular suit would be better. This is a sophisticated crowd." Sophisticated. Code for don't embarrass me. But I'd worn the uniform for a reason. Tonight, the truth would finally have its day. The scholarship fund wasn't just money. It was my legacy, stolen and repackaged. Eleanor's first-generation Student Success Fund had become the university's flagship program. $2.3 million raised over 4 years, all because donors believed they were supporting someone who'd truly pulled herself up from nothing. The fund's marketing materials featured Eleanor's story prominently. Dr. Grant's journey from poverty to academic leadership proves that education can break any barrier. Below her photo, despite having no family support or understanding of higher education, Eleanor Grant saved every dollar, worked multiple jobs, and earned her PhD through sheer determination. No family support. The words burned every time I read them. But the financial deception went deeper. Eleanor now commanded $15,000 per speaking engagement, traveling to conferences nationwide as the poster child for first-generation success. From food stamps to full professor, her signature speech had been booked solid for 3 years. Food stamps. We'd never qualified because I earned too much working those 80-hour weeks. The speaking fees alone had earned her over $200,000 in additional income. Book deals were pending. A documentary crew had contacted her agent about profiling inspiring first-generation leaders, all built on erasing me. Meanwhile, I lived in the same one-bedroom apartment I'd rented in 2002, $1,200 a month, the same furniture, same truck with 200,000 miles. I'd never recovered financially from those sacrifice years. My retirement account was nearly empty. Every dollar I should have saved went to her tuition instead. But staying silent would cost more than money. The university was planning a major capital campaign announcement tonight. Governor Walsh would reveal the new Eleanor Grant Center for First-Generation Student Success, a $15 million facility funded by donors inspired by her story. $15 million raised on a lie. If I didn't speak up, the lie would become permanent. Carved in stone above the building entrance, dedicated to first-generation students who, like Dr. Eleanor Grant, overcome family barriers through education. Family barriers, as if I'd been the obstacle instead of the foundation. There were legal implications, too. The university's donor agreements specified that contributions to the First Generation Fund supported students with no family history of higher education. Eleanor's false claims could constitute fraud, intentional misrepresentation to secure donations. If exposed, she'd face more than embarrassment. Federal investigation, possible criminal charges for wire fraud involving charitable donations, professional destruction, academic career over, but the personal cost of silence was higher. Every month, I received the fund's newsletter featuring Eleanor's message to first-gen students. Reading her advice about overcoming family obstacles and believing in yourself when no one else will felt like being stabbed repeatedly. She'd stolen my sacrifice twice, once by denying it, then by profiting from its absence. The governor's presence tonight made everything more dangerous. Walsh had committed $50 million to the university, based partly on Eleanor's inspiring story. If he discovered the deception, the consequences would extend far beyond our family. But I had allies Eleanor didn't know about. Martinez, now a university trustee, had been my supervisor during those sacrifice years. He'd watched me work double shifts, seen me fall asleep standing up from exhaustion. He'd be at tonight's party. The local news had been contacted too. Human interest story about the janitor's daughter who became dean. They'd want quotes about family pride and sacrifice. Perfect opportunity for truth. And Governor Walsh himself. Eleanor didn't know our connection. Didn't know he'd been Staff Sergeant Walsh when our convoy hit that IED outside Baghdad. Didn't know I'd pulled him and 22 others from a burning vehicle, earning the Medal of Honor that she found so embarrassing. The manila envelope in my truck contained more than receipts. Her original college essay, bank statements proving my sacrifice, and her hoarded emergency fund, time cards showing those brutal work weeks, local newspaper clippings from her graduation, quoting me about being proud to give my daughter opportunities I never had. By morning, either Eleanor would confess the truth publicly, or I'd present the evidence that would expose her fraud to 95 witnesses, 2 news cameras, and the governor of Michigan. The choice was hers, but the silence was ending tonight. The confrontation started at the appetizer table. Eleanor was holding court near the mansion's crystal chandelier, a 12-foot Waterford piece worth more than my annual salary. She wore her signature black dress, the $1,500 one from her speaking engagement in Chicago. The key, she was telling 3 trustees, is understanding that first-generation students face unique psychological barriers. I approached with a small plate of shrimp, $30 a pound, according to the catering menu I'd glimpsed. Barriers like what? Trustee Morrison asked. Family members who don't value education, Eleanor replied smoothly. Parents who see college as wasted time instead of investment. I nearly dropped my plate. Eleanor, I said quietly. She turned, irritation flashing across her face. Yes? Perhaps the barriers aren't always from family. The trustees looked at me with polite curiosity. This is Raymond, Eleanor said quickly. He helps around campus. Actually, Morrison said, studying my uniform, aren't you Eleanor's father? I remember from the promotion ceremony. Eleanor's smile tightened. Yes, but tonight's about the scholarship program. Mr. Grant, Morrison continued, you must be proud of Eleanor's first-generation success story. First generation, I repeated slowly. Dad, Eleanor warned. Tell me, I said to Morrison, what exactly does first generation mean? Parents with no college experience, Morrison explained. No family understanding of higher education. Students who navigate the system entirely alone. Entirely alone, I echoed. Eleanor stepped closer. Dad, why don't you check on the kitchen? I'm curious about the alone part, I continued, because I attended every parent orientation session. Morrison looked confused. Parent orientations? 4 of them, I said. September 2002, January 2003, September 2004, September 2006. 2-hour drives each way. Never missed one. Eleanor's face was reddening. That's not relevant to... I also met with her academic advisor every semester, I added. Discussed course selection, grade requirements, graduation timelines. Mr. Grant, Morrison said slowly, that doesn't sound like no family support. Dad, you're misunderstanding the terminology, Eleanor interjected. Am I? The other trustees were listening now. The room's energy was shifting. First generation means I was the first in my family to attend college, Eleanor said firmly. Dad never went to college. That's true, I agreed. 9th grade education. See? But I understood college perfectly, I continued, especially the costs. Eleanor's eyes flashed warning signals. Costs? Asked Trustee Chen. $1,400 here, I said. $1,500 there. Sometimes $2,000 for a bigger semester. Dad, added up to quite a lot over 6 years. 6 years? Morrison looked puzzled. Undergraduate plus graduate school, I explained. Engineering degree, then PhD in educational leadership. Eleanor stepped between us. We should really focus on tonight's celebration. How did you manage the costs? Chen asked me directly. Student loans? Eleanor shot me a desperate look. No loans, I said simply. Scholarships, then? No scholarships either. The trustees exchanged glances. Then how? Morrison started. 3 jobs, I said. Janitor, security guard, weekend construction. Dad, please stop, Eleanor hissed under her breath. 80-hour weeks for 6 years. Chen was taking notes now. Mr. Grant, this is fascinating. You single-handedly funded Eleanor's entire education? Every penny. Eleanor's composure was cracking. The terminology is still accurate because... Because what? Morrison interrupted. Your father paid your way through college and graduate school, attended every orientation, met with advisors regularly, and worked 3 jobs to support your education. But he didn't attend college himself, Eleanor said weakly. So the no family support claim, Chen was writing furiously, is bullshit, I said quietly. The trustees went silent. Eleanor's face turned white. Dad! Sorry, I said. Is inaccurate. Morrison was staring at Eleanor now. Dr. Grant, your scholarship fund is specifically for students with no family support. The technical definition. There's nothing technical about this, Chen interrupted. Your father sacrificed everything for your education. We should discuss this privately, Eleanor said desperately. Why privately? Morrison asked. This is wonderful news. Your father's story makes the scholarship fund even more meaningful. Eleanor looked trapped. Where is your father's story in the fund materials? Chen pressed. It's complicated. Complicated how? I prefer to focus on student experiences rather than family narratives. Morrison frowned. But family sacrifice is central to the first-generation experience. When the family is supportive, Eleanor said carefully. The room went dead quiet. Are you saying your father wasn't supportive? Chen asked. Eleanor looked at me with pure panic. Very supportive, I said calmly. Perhaps too supportive. The trustees were clearly confused now. Too supportive? Morrison repeated. Dad, you're old and tired, Eleanor said suddenly. Maybe you should sit down. The trustees stared at her. Excuse me? Morrison said. Eleanor realized her mistake immediately. I just meant... You told your father he's old and tired? Chen looked appalled. At his own birthday party? Morrison added. Eleanor's scholarship fund director image was crumbling in real time, and we hadn't even reached the main course yet. The tension in the room was palpable, but Eleanor wasn't finished digging herself deeper. What I meant, she said, trying to recover, is that Dad sometimes misremembers details from those years. Misremembers. Like I was suffering from dementia. Morrison looked offended on my behalf. Mr. Grant seems quite sharp to me. Of course, Eleanor backtracked. But the financial details are complex. Complex how? Chen pressed. I reached into my jacket pocket and touched the envelope containing those receipts. Not yet. Let her keep talking. Student finances involve many variables, Eleanor said vaguely. Aid packages, work-study programs, family contribution calculations. But your father said no loans or scholarships, Morrison pointed out. Right, and he worked 80-hour weeks paying your expenses directly. Eleanor was floundering. The Department of Education defines first generation by parental education levels, not financial support. Technically correct. Morally bankrupt. Dr. Grant, Chen said slowly, are you telling us that despite your father's enormous sacrifice, you still qualify as first generation because he lacks formal education? The federal definition is clear, but the spirit of the program is to help students who need support, Eleanor interrupted. Which I did. Morrison was getting angry. You needed support because your father was working himself to death, paying your bills. That was his choice, Eleanor said. His choice, like I'd forced myself into poverty for fun. The trustees exchanged meaningful looks. This conversation was being filed away for future board discussions. But then I noticed something that changed everything. Governor Walsh had arrived. He stood in the mansion's doorway, scanning the room. Still tall and lean at 55, though his hair had gone silver since our army days. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my truck, but I recognized the posture, shoulders square, alert eyes, cataloging every face in the room. Eleanor hadn't seen him yet. She was still defending her twisted logic to the increasingly hostile trustees. The point is, she was saying, first-generation students face specific challenges regardless of family financial support. What challenges did you face? Morrison demanded. Your father covered everything. Psychological challenges, social barriers, cultural adaptation. Cultural adaptation. From what culture? We'd lived in Michigan her entire life. Governor Walsh was moving through the crowd now, shaking hands with university officials. He'd reach our group within minutes. I had to make a decision. Reveal our connection now, or wait for the formal announcement Eleanor didn't know was coming. Dad, Eleanor said, noticing my distraction, maybe you'd be more comfortable in the library. Quieter. She was trying to exile me before the real VIPs arrived. I'm fine here, I said, but Governor Walsh will want to discuss policy matters with the academic leadership. I'm sure he will. Eleanor shot me another warning look. Adult conversations about complex issues. Adult conversations. As if I was a child. Chen looked disgusted. Dr. Grant, your tone toward your father is quite concerning. I'm just being realistic about his comfort level. His comfort level, Morrison repeated icily. After working 3 jobs to fund your education. Eleanor was losing the trustee's respect in real time, but she couldn't stop herself. Look, she said, I appreciate everything Dad did, but tonight's about the scholarship program's future, not ancient history. Ancient history. 6 years of my life reduced to irrelevant memories. Mr. Grant, Jen said to me, how do you feel about your sacrifice being called ancient history? Before I could answer, a familiar voice spoke behind me. Ray Grant? I turned. Governor Walsh stood 3 feet away, his face breaking into a huge grin. Holy shit, he said, then caught himself. Sorry, Ray Grant. Eleanor looked confused. Governor, this is Staff Sergeant Grant. Walsh grabbed my hand in both of his. I can't believe it. The trustees were staring. You two know each other? Morrison asked. Know each other? Walsh laughed. This man saved my life. Eleanor's face went white. Iraq, 2004, Walsh continued. Our convoy hit an IED outside Baghdad. Vehicle caught fire, 3 of us trapped inside. Ray pulled us out one by one under enemy fire. Chen was writing frantically. That's how he earned the Medal of Honor, Walsh said proudly. 23 soldiers saved that day. I was one of them. Eleanor looked like she might faint. Governor, she said weakly, I had no idea you'd served together. Served together? Walsh looked at her like she was insane. Lady Ray Grant is the reason I'm alive to be governor. The reason I have a wife and kids. The reason I can donate $50 million to universities like this one. 50 million. The number hung in the air like a thunderclap. Morrison was staring at Eleanor with something approaching disgust. Dr. Grant, your father is a Medal of Honor recipient? Yes, but... And you told him he was old and tired? At his own birthday party? Chen added. Walsh looked confused. What's happening here? Dr. Grant was just explaining, Morrison said coldly, why she considers her father's sacrifice ancient history. My father's sacrifice? Walsh's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent 20 years in politics. Ray Grant's sacrifice saved 23 American soldiers. My sacrifice? He worked 3 jobs for 6 years paying his daughter's college expenses. Eleanor was trapped between the Medal of Honor revelation and her scholarship fund lies. The perfect storm was forming. Governor, she said desperately, perhaps we could discuss the evening's program? Absolutely, Walsh said. I have a special announcement about tonight's honoree. Tonight's honoree. Eleanor assumed he meant her. But first, Walsh continued, looking directly at me, Ray, I hope you brought your dress uniform. You're going to need it. I smiled slightly. Already wearing it, sir. Walsh grinned. Outstanding. Because tonight, everyone's going to know exactly who Raymond Grant really is. Eleanor's scholarship fund empire was about to collapse, and she still had no idea what was coming. The formal dinner began at 8:30 sharp. Eleanor had arranged the seating strategically, herself at the head table with Governor Walsh, university president, and major donors. Me at table 7, in the back corner with campus maintenance staff and their spouses. Hidden away again. But Governor Walsh had other plans. Where's Ray? He asked loudly as the salad course arrived. Eleanor froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. I'm sorry? Ray Grant. Where's he sitting? Table 7, Eleanor said quietly. Walsh stood up immediately. Table 7? In the back? The entire room of 95 guests turned to watch. Governor, Eleanor said desperately, perhaps after dinner. Like hell! Walsh was already walking toward my table. I watched him approach, feeling every eye in the room. The maintenance crew looked terrified. They'd never had the governor at their table before. Ray, Walsh said, reaching my chair, what are you doing back here? Enjoying the salmon, I said calmly. This is bullshit. Walsh turned to address the entire room. Excuse me, everyone. Conversations died instantly. The guest of honor is sitting in the back corner like hired help, Walsh announced. Who arranged this seating? Eleanor raised her hand weakly. I did, but... Well, fix it. Now. Eleanor looked mortified. Governor, I'm sure Dad is comfortable. Comfortable? Walsh's voice carried to every corner of the mansion. Ray Grant, Medal of Honor recipient, father of tonight's honoree, sitting in the back corner? What kind of family treats a war hero like invisible furniture? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't going according to Eleanor's script. Perhaps there was a mix-up, the university president suggested diplomatically. No mix-up, Eleanor said, trying to salvage control. Dad prefers quieter settings. Walsh looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Lady, your father charged through enemy fire to save 23 soldiers. You think he's afraid of a dinner conversation? More murmurs. People were pulling out their phones now. Eleanor made a fatal mistake. She doubled down. Governor, with respect, you might not understand our family dynamics. Dad can get overwhelmed in formal settings. He's more comfortable with people from his background. The room went dead silent. Walsh's face darkened. His background? Working class environment? Simple conversations? I closed my eyes. She'd just called me simple in front of 95 witnesses. Dr. Grant, Walsh said, his voice dangerously quiet, are you saying your father lacks the intelligence for sophisticated company? Eleanor realized too late that she'd walked into a trap. Not intelligence, just comfort level. Comfort level. Social familiarity. Walsh looked around the room slowly. Folks, let me tell you about Ray Grant's comfort level. October 15th, 2004, outside Baghdad. Convoy ambush, IED explosion, 3 vehicles burning, 23 soldiers trapped or wounded. Eleanor's face was getting redder. Your father, Walsh continued, pointing at Eleanor, ran into that kill zone 4 separate times, under machine gun fire, pulled out 8 men from the first vehicle, 7 from the second, 8 from the third, including me. The room was absolutely silent now. But here's the part that shows his real character, Walsh said. After the evacuation, when the medics were treating wounded, Ray went back a 5th time. You know why? Eleanor shook her head. Because he'd counted wrong. Thought he'd missed someone. Turned out he hadn't. But he went back anyway, under fire, to make sure. Walsh paused for effect. That's the man you just called simple. The man you're hiding in the back corner. The man you think lacks social sophistication. Eleanor's scholarship fund director persona was disintegrating in real time. Governor, she said weakly, I didn't mean... What did you mean? Walsh demanded. The university president tried to intervene. Perhaps we could... No, Walsh cut him off. I want to hear what she meant. Eleanor looked around desperately. Every face in the room was staring at her. Trustee Morrison looked disgusted. Chen was still taking notes. The local news reporter was filming everything. I meant, Eleanor said finally, that Dad sometimes feels out of place in academic settings. Academic settings? Walsh repeated. Yes. Like the academic setting he funded entirely through manual labor? Eleanor's eyes widened. Walsh knew about the tuition payments. Governor, how did I what? Know that your father worked 3 jobs for 6 years paying your college expenses? Know that he ate ramen noodles so you could eat at the campus dining hall? Know that he never took a single loan or scholarship dollar? Eleanor looked panicked. Who told you that? Walsh smiled grimly. Your father told me. We've been in touch for years. Christmas cards, occasional phone calls. I know exactly what he sacrificed for your education. Eleanor's carefully constructed world was collapsing. I also know, Walsh continued, about your first-generation student success fund, the one that's raised $2.3 million based on your inspiring story of overcoming family barriers. Eleanor couldn't speak. What family barriers were those again? Walsh asked innocently. Eleanor looked around the room desperately. Everyone was waiting for her answer. Governor, she whispered, could we discuss this privately? Why privately? We're all friends here, academic family. Tell us about these family barriers you overcame. Eleanor's mouth opened and closed silently. Because from where I sit, Walsh said, the only barrier in your family was your father's poverty, which he created by working himself half to death paying your bills. The room was so quiet you could hear the chandelier crystals tinkling in the air conditioning. In fact, Walsh continued, I'd say your father removed every possible barrier to your education. Financial barriers, logistical barriers, psychological barriers. He cleared the entire path so you could walk straight to success. Eleanor was crying now. So help me understand, Walsh said, how that becomes a story about overcoming family obstacles. Eleanor couldn't answer, because there was no answer, and Walsh wasn't finished yet. Governor Walsh moved to the podium like a man with a mission. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, I came here tonight to make a special announcement about Michigan's commitment to higher education. Eleanor wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. She probably thought this was her moment. the announcement of the Eleanor Grant Center she'd been expecting. But first, Walsh continued, I need to share a story about sacrifice and honor. He gestured toward me. Ray Grant and I served together in Iraq, 3rd Infantry Division, 2003 to 2005. Ray was a staff sergeant. I was a corporal. He had 15 years of service. I was just a kid from Detroit trying to pay for college. The room was completely focused now. October 15th, 2004. We were running convoy security between Baghdad and Fallujah. 3 Humvees, 26 soldiers total. Ray was in the lead vehicle, always took the most dangerous position. Eleanor had stopped crying, but her face was pale. The IED hit at 0800 hours, buried mine, probably a 155-meter artillery shell, took out the lead vehicle completely, flipped the second one, damaged the third. 3 vehicles burning, enemy fire from 2 directions. Walsh paused, scanning the room. What happened next defines everything you need to know about Ray Grant's character. He pulled out his phone and began reading from what looked like an official document. Medal of Honor citation, Staff Sergeant Raymond Grant. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Ray charged into that kill zone 5 separate times. No body armor. His had been damaged in the initial blast. No backup. Our air support was 20 minutes out. The room was absolutely silent. First trip, pulled 3 wounded soldiers from the burning lead vehicle. Second trip, 4 more from the same vehicle, including the driver who was unconscious and pinned. Third trip, 7 soldiers from the overturned Humvee. Fourth trip, 8 soldiers from the damaged rear vehicle, including me. Walsh's voice grew stronger. But here's what the citation doesn't capture. After Ray had evacuated all 23 of us, after the shooting stopped, after the medics arrived, he went back one more time. 5th trip, under residual sniper fire, because he thought he'd miscounted. Thought someone might still be trapped. Eleanor was staring at her hands now. Turned out his count was perfect. All 23 soldiers accounted for, but Ray Grant went back anyway because that's who he is. A man who would rather risk his life than leave someone behind. Walsh set down his phone. That same character, that same refusal to leave anyone behind, defined Ray's entire life after the army, including his relationship with his daughter. Eleanor's head snapped up. See, I've stayed in touch with Ray over the years. Christmas cards became phone calls. Phone calls became friendships. I know about his 3 jobs. I know about the 80-hour work weeks. I know about the $186,000 he paid in cash for Eleanor's education. The university president looked shocked. $186,000? Every penny documented, Walsh confirmed. I've seen the receipts. September 2002 through May 2008. Undergraduate engineering degree, followed by PhD in educational leadership. No loans, no scholarships, just a father who refused to leave his daughter behind financially. Trustee Morrison was shaking his head in amazement. Ray worked as a janitor here at this very university, Walsh continued. Night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Then he'd drive to his security guard job downtown, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Weekends he did construction work, 80 to 90 hours per week, every week, for 6 years. Eleanor looked like she wanted to disappear. While Ray was eating ramen noodles and sleeping 4 hours a night, Eleanor was building an impressive academic record. Summa cum laude undergraduate, full fellowship for graduate school, which she turned down because her father was already covering expenses. The fellowship detail was new to me. Eleanor had never mentioned turning down funding. But here's what makes this story remarkable, Walsh said. Ray never asked for recognition, never asked for gratitude, never even asked for acknowledgement. He just wanted his daughter to succeed. Walsh paused for effect, which makes tonight's announcement particularly meaningful. Eleanor straightened up, hoping for redemption. The state of Michigan, in partnership with the University of Michigan system, is establishing the Raymond Grant Memorial Scholarship Fund, $5 million in initial funding, with additional corporate matching grants expected to double that amount. Eleanor's face went white. Memorial Scholarship? That wasn't her name. The fund will support children of military veterans who demonstrate the same work ethic and sacrifice that Ray Grant showed. Students whose families embody the values of service, integrity, and putting others before themselves. Walsh smiled directly at me. Ray, would you please join me at the podium? I stood slowly, aware that every eye in the room was tracking my movement. The maintenance crew at my table looked stunned. Chester, who cleaned the engineering building, whispered, Holy shit, Ray. As I walked toward the podium, Walsh continued his announcement. The Raymond Grant Scholarship will be administered jointly by the State Veterans Affairs Office and the University Financial Aid Department. Recipients will be selected based on family sacrifice, academic merit, and demonstrated character. I reached the podium. Walsh shook my hand firmly. Ray, would you like to say something about the scholarship program? I looked out at 95 faces. Eleanor's was the palest among them. Thank you, Governor, I said simply. I'm honored that my name might help other families achieve their educational dreams. Walsh nodded. The first scholarship recipient has already been selected. Maria Santos, daughter of Army Sergeant Miguel Santos, killed in Afghanistan in 2019. Her mother works 2 jobs to support 3 children. Sound familiar? A few people chuckled, but the mood remained solemn. But there's one more announcement, Walsh said. Dr. Eleanor Grant, as director of the university's first-generation Student Success Fund, will be giving the keynote address about family sacrifice and educational achievement. Eleanor's face went completely white. Dr. Grant, Walsh continued, would you please join us at the podium? I believe you have some thoughts about how family support, or the lack thereof, impacts student success. Eleanor remained frozen in her chair. Dr. Grant? Walsh repeated. The room was waiting. Cameras were rolling. Eleanor had to choose. Walk to the podium and speak about family sacrifice while standing next to her father, or refuse and look like a coward. Either way, her lies were about to be exposed to 95 witnesses. The moment of truth had arrived. Eleanor rose from her chair like a woman walking to her execution. The 20-foot journey to the podium felt like 20 miles. Every step amplified by the silence of 95 witnesses watching her approach the microphone that would either redeem her or destroy her completely. She reached the podium and stood between Governor Walsh and me. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, the liar flanked by truth-tellers. Dr. Grant, Walsh said warmly, please share your insights about family sacrifice and educational achievement. Eleanor gripped the podium edges, her knuckles white against the dark wood. Thank you, Governor, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. The microphone caught every tremor. When we talk about family sacrifice, she stopped, looking out at the expectant faces. Trustee Morrison leaned forward. Chen's pen was poised. The news camera rolled steadily. Family sacrifices. Eleanor started again, then stopped. She turned slightly and looked at me. For the first time in years, really looked at me. Not through me, not around me, at me. My father, she said, and her voice cracked. The room held its breath. My father worked 3 jobs for 6 years to pay for my education. A collective exhale rippled through the audience. Janitor, security guard, weekend construction, 80-hour weeks, every semester payment made in cash, $186,000 total. Eleanor's carefully constructed facade was crumbling in real time. While I was studying in the library, he was mopping the floors of that same library. While I was eating in the campus dining hall, he was eating ramen noodles at home. While I was sleeping 8 hours a night in my dorm room, he was sleeping 4 hours between shifts. Tears started flowing again, but she continued. I have claimed in my professional biography that I am a first-generation college student who overcame family barriers through personal determination. That claim is technically accurate. My father never attended college. But it is morally bankrupt. The university president shifted uncomfortably. The scholarship fund's entire foundation was collapsing publicly. The truth is that I face no barriers because my father removed every single one. Financial barriers, logistical barriers, emotional barriers. He cleared the path completely so I could walk straight to success. Eleanor turned to face me directly, and instead of honoring that sacrifice, I erased it. I turned his generosity into my personal achievement. I built a career on denying his existence. The room was absolutely silent, except for the soft whir of the news camera. The First Generation Student Success Fund has raised $2.3 million based on my false narrative of overcoming family obstacles. Donors contributed believing they were supporting students who, like me, had no family support for education. Trustee Morrison was writing furiously now. That narrative is a lie. I had total family support. I had a father who sacrificed everything for my dreams. I had a father who attended every orientation session, met with my advisors, monitored my progress, celebrated my achievements. Eleanor's voice grew stronger as she continued confessing. I had a father who worked the night shift at this very university, so he could be available for my daytime needs, who learned the campus layout so he could help me navigate it, who saved every penny of overtime pay for my tuition while living on peanut butter sandwiches. Governor Walsh nodded encouragingly. The scholarship fund I direct is built on stolen valor. Not military valor, moral valor. I stole the story of my father's sacrifice and repackaged it as my personal triumph over adversity. Eleanor reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. This is my resignation letter as director of the First Generation Student Success Fund, effective immediately. She handed the letter to the university president, who accepted it with visible shock. The fund should be restructured to accurately reflect its mission, supporting students whose families make extraordinary sacrifices for education. Students like Maria Santos, whose father died serving our country. Students whose parents work multiple jobs and impossible hours to clear the path for their children's dreams. Eleanor turned back to me. Dad, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you 20 years of acknowledgement, 20 years of gratitude, 20 years of telling the truth about who made my success possible. She paused, gathering courage for the hardest part. But most of all, I owe you the respect of never again calling you old and tired, never again treating you as invisible, never again erasing your sacrifice from my story. Eleanor looked out at the audience one final time. The Raymond Grant Memorial Scholarship Fund announced tonight will support students whose families embody the values my father demonstrated: service, sacrifice, and putting others before themselves. It's a perfect tribute to a man who spent 6 years putting his daughter before himself. She stepped back from the microphone. The room erupted in spontaneous applause. Not polite dinner party clapping, real applause. People were standing. The maintenance crew at Table 7 was cheering. Governor Walsh stepped forward and embraced Eleanor, then turned to shake my hand. Ray, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, your daughter just showed the same courage under fire that you did in Iraq. Eleanor was crying again, but differently now. Relief, not shame. I approached the microphone for the final word. Thank you all for witnessing this moment, I said simply. Eleanor made mistakes, but she also made them right. That takes character. I looked at my daughter. And character is something you can't inherit. You have to earn it yourself. Eleanor smiled through her tears. The scholarship fund will be restructured with full transparency, the university president announced. All donors will be notified of the changes and given the option to redirect their contributions. Governor Walsh nodded. The state's $5 million commitment stands. In fact, we're doubling it. $10 million for the Raymond Grant Scholarship Fund, administered with complete honesty about family sacrifice. Eleanor's lies had been replaced with truth. Her stolen narrative had been returned to its rightful owner. But the real victory wasn't mine. It was hers. She'd chosen courage over comfort, truth over convenience. The daughter I'd raised was finally visible again. The news cameras captured everything. By morning, the video of Eleanor's confession had 40,000 views on the local station's website. By afternoon, it was trending on social media under #ScholarshipGhost and #FamilySacrifice. The university moved quickly to contain the damage. President Morrison called an emergency board meeting for the following Monday. The First Generation Student Success Fund was immediately suspended, pending a complete audit of donor communications and fund allocations. Eleanor's resignation was accepted without discussion. The university's legal team spent the weekend reviewing donor agreements and federal compliance issues. The potential liability was staggering. Not just financial, but regulatory. The Department of Education took a dim view of fraudulent scholarship programs. By Tuesday, the university had released a comprehensive statement. The University of Michigan acknowledges that certain representations made in connection with the First Generation Student Success Fund were inaccurate. We are conducting a thorough review of all fund materials and donor communications. Affected donors will be contacted directly regarding their contribution preferences. Eleanor's speaking agent called Wednesday morning. 16 scheduled engagements canceled immediately. The documentary crew withdrew their interest. The book deal discussions ended. Her annual salary was $127,000 as Dean of Academic Affairs. The speaking fees had added another $60,000 per year, gone overnight. But the professional consequences extended beyond money. The Michigan Association of Higher Education issued a formal censure Friday afternoon. Eleanor's membership in the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators was suspended pending review. 3 academic journals retracted articles she'd published about first-generation student experiences. Her curriculum vitae, once a source of pride, became a liability. Every line would be scrutinized now, every claim verified. Her entire academic reputation was under review. The scholarship fund required complete restructuring. Of the $2.3 million raised, $400,000 had already been distributed to students based on Eleanor's false narrative. Those scholarships would continue. The students had done nothing wrong, but future awards would be processed under new guidelines requiring documented family financial sacrifice. 57 donors requested meetings to discuss their contributions. 31 asked for their money back entirely. The university honored every request, depleting the fund to $1.1 million. Governor Walsh's announcement had promised $10 million in state funding for the Raymond Grant Scholarship Fund. That money would be held in a separate account, administered jointly by the Veterans Affairs Office and the university, with stringent oversight protocols. The Raymond Grant scholarship criteria were specific. Children of military veterans whose families demonstrated measurable financial sacrifice for education. Recipients would be selected by a committee including veteran representatives, university financial aid officers, and community members. Maria Santos would receive the first $5,000 award in September. Eleanor's personal life imploded alongside her professional reputation. The academic community is small and gossipy. Within days, everyone knew about the Medal of Honor father she'd hidden, the sacrifice she'd denied, the scholarship fund built on lies. Faculty dinner invitations stopped coming. Her research collaborations went quiet. Graduate students requested different advisors. The prestigious university president's mansion, where she'd hosted my birthday party, became a reminder of her humiliation. She moved out of her faculty housing and rented a modest apartment across town. But the social consequences cut deeper than professional ones. Eleanor had built her identity around being the inspiring first-generation success story, speaking to auditoriums full of struggling students about overcoming family obstacles, publishing articles about resilience and self-determination. That identity was gone forever. She couldn't reinvent herself as the grateful daughter of a sacrifice-making father without acknowledging 20 years of lies. She couldn't return to her old narrative without facing criminal fraud charges. She was stuck in the uncomfortable middle ground of truth. The legal implications remained murky. The university's lawyers found no evidence of criminal intent. Eleanor hadn't personally profited from donor funds. The speaking fees were legitimate payments for actual presentations, even if those presentations were based on false premises. But federal investigators opened a preliminary inquiry into potential wire fraud related to scholarship fund marketing materials. Eleanor hired a criminal defense attorney, just in case. The psychological cost was perhaps highest of all. For 20 years, Eleanor had lived with the cognitive dissonance of claiming self-made success while knowing the truth of my sacrifice. The mental energy required to maintain that lie, to carefully edit every conversation and biography, had been enormous. The confession brought relief alongside devastation. She called me Thursday evening, 3 days after the birthday party disaster. "Dad?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "Hello, Eleanor. I wanted to thank you for not making it worse." "Worse how?" "You could have brought the receipts to the podium. Could have detailed every lie publicly. Could have destroyed me completely." I was quiet for a moment. "Destroying you wasn't the goal," I said finally. "Truth was the goal." "I know, and I'm grateful." "Are you?" "Yes, living with the lie was killing me. I just didn't know how to stop." That was the daughter I remembered, honest about her struggles. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you rebuild, with truth this time." "I don't know how." "Same way you build anything, one piece at a time." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. "Dad?" "Yes?" "Will you help me figure out who I am without the lies?" "I've been waiting 20 years for you to ask that question." The Raymond Grant Scholarship Fund announcement had given me back my legacy, but Eleanor's confession had given me back my daughter. The real payoff wasn't public vindication or financial recognition. It was the possibility of an honest relationship with the person I'd sacrificed everything to raise. The truth had set us both free. 6 months later, Eleanor and I met for lunch at a small diner near campus. She looked different, lighter somehow, despite the professional wreckage. The constant tension of maintaining lies had left her face. She seemed younger, more like the earnest college student I remembered. The Raymond Grant Scholarship awarded its first grants last week, she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. I saw the announcement, 12 recipients. Maria Santos is studying pre-med at University of Michigan, full ride plus living expenses. I nodded. Governor Walsh mentioned that. Dad, Eleanor said carefully, I want you to know I recommended Maria personally. You're working with the scholarship committee? Volunteer basis. The new fund administrators asked if I'd help evaluate applications. Make sure they understand the family sacrifice component. Eleanor looked embarrassed. Turns out my experience with lies makes me good at spotting truth. I smiled. That's one way to use the skill set. She laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from her in years. The university offered me a different position, she continued. Assistant Director of Veteran Student Services, 20% pay cut, but honest work. Honest work is underrated. I'm learning that. Eleanor reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. Not resignation this time, but something else. I wrote something for you, she said, sliding it across the table. I unfolded it carefully. It was handwritten on university letterhead. To my father, Raymond Grant. For 6 years, you worked 80-hour weeks to pay for my education. You ate ramen noodles so I could eat in dining halls. You slept 4 hours so I could sleep 8. You sacrificed your comfort, your health, your savings, and your dreams for mine. In return, I denied your existence. I built a career on erasing your sacrifice. I turned your generosity into my personal achievement. I called you old and tired at your own birthday party. I cannot undo 20 years of lies, but I can spend the next 20 years telling the truth. The truth is, I am not self-made. I am father-made. The truth is, I face no barriers because you removed them all. The truth is, my success is your success, and I will spend the rest of my life honoring that reality. I love you. I am proud to be your daughter, and I will never again hide your sacrifice from my story. Eleanor. I read it twice before looking up. This is nice, I said simply. Nice? Eleanor looked concerned. I was hoping for more than nice. It's a start. A start? Eleanor, I don't need written apologies. I need consistent behavior. She nodded slowly. You're right. I need a daughter who introduces me as her father, not as Raymond. Who includes me in conversations instead of dismissing me. Who acknowledges her advantages instead of claiming victimhood. I understand. Do you? Eleanor met my eyes directly. Dad, I spent 20 years treating you like you were invisible. I can't fix that with one letter. But I can spend the next 20 years making sure you're visible. How? By telling the truth about my education funding every time someone asks. By crediting your sacrifice in every professional bio. By introducing you as the Medal of Honor recipient who made my career possible. I folded the letter carefully. And by never again calling you old and tired, Eleanor added quietly. That would be appreciated. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Dad? Yes? Will you come to the scholarship award ceremony next month? They want you to present Maria's check. Of course. And will you let me introduce you properly this time? I smiled. I'd like that. Eleanor reached across the table and took my hand. I missed you, she said. Even when I was denying you existed, I missed you. I was always here. I know. I'm sorry it took so long to see you. Truth creates its own momentum. Once Eleanor started acknowledging my sacrifice, it became easier to acknowledge other truths. Her privilege, her advantages, her debt to family support. The lies had required constant energy to maintain. The truth required only courage to speak. We finished lunch and walked to the parking lot together. Eleanor's car was a modest Honda now. The BMW lease had been too expensive after her speaking income disappeared. Dad, she said as we reached my truck. Yes? Thank you for not giving up on me. Family doesn't give up, Eleanor. That's what family means. She hugged me then, really hugged me, not the careful social embrace she'd perfected for public events. I love you, Dad. I love you too. I drove home thinking about boundaries and truth and the courage required for both. Eleanor had learned that stolen narratives eventually collapse under their own weight. I'd learned that silence can be complicity, but we'd both learned that it's never too late to choose truth over comfort. The Raymond Grant Scholarship Fund would help dozens of military families achieve their educational dreams. But the real scholarship, the lesson about honesty and sacrifice and family loyalty, had already been awarded to my daughter. Finally, have you ever had someone take credit for your sacrifice? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from.